the only thing that's consistent about gender ideology, every single claim it makes, if you actually just go to the complete opposite of what the claim is, you'll find the truth. People are saying cancel culture doesn't exist. It does. I'm literally living it. He filed an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint against me, citing gender identity discrimination, despite the fact that I didn't know that he had a gender identity. The fact that he did is enough. The judge also said that sex is changeable.
I know that I can now get on with the rest of my life.
Just no. Like, no is a full sentence here. No. No to any of it. Women fighting for women's rights have always done it with the opposition of a lot of men and far too many women. Always wondered what it would be like to live in like a dystopian society. I was always really curious about that as a kid. I'm now no longer curious.
To be kind to these people, we need to tell a little lie because it's nice and, these are very, very vulnerable people.
If a man can wear a dress in public, he's not vulnerable. I'm 5 years in. Not one person has made a single argument or statement that has made me think, oh, I'm wrong. Perverted men seem to think that the best argument to gain access into women-only spaces is to threaten us with murder.
How have you been able to stay sane? Sall Grover, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm really, really well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. Well, I know that you had a birthday recently, right? So wanted to give you a belated happy birthday.
Wow. Thank you. 40. I turned 40. It's happened. Like life, it's just happening. But so far, I like it.
It's going to be the decade where men can't be women, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect to spend like the latter half of my 30s even saying this stupid thing, but here we are. I mean, if I'm 50 saying this, I'll be pretty bitter by that point. I'll just be like, I don't know, I was just sitting like in a ring of fire burning things, but no, I'm optimistic. I think we're getting closer and closer every day
Yeah.
to this ending.
Yeah, me too. Well, I'm sure my audience will be no stranger to you, but if you'd like to give a bit of an overview on who you are, how come we're speaking to each other today, and we'll go from there.
Cool. So, in 2019, 2018, my mum and I got the idea to create a social networking app for women. It was going to be just like a place where women could find roommates and freelance work, and there's like emotional support and lesbian dating, and like there was like a female-only Twitter as well. Like, just basically, we tried to think. There's so many other things as well. We just tried to think of any sort of thing that women would want to connect about and create this like sort of little corner of the internet. And I definitely didn't know. I didn't know anything that I know now. When I think back to it, of how naive I was about so many different things, but even just there's so many aspects of women-only spaces. So it's like such a long and interesting journey. But basically, we were cancelled before we were even launched because trans activists, which I didn't even know was a thing, found us on the App Store and Google Play when we were still in the beta testing phase. We were just ironing out the bugs, like all security wasn't in yet or anything, and infiltrated the App Store and Google Play with 1-star reviews, like thousands of them, put us into an algorithmic black hole we would never have been able to get out of. No media would speak to me in Australia. I mean, it took, I think, 13 months of being cancelled, which initially when it all first happened, I thought that what was happening was so ridiculous that it would just blow over really quickly. That didn't happen at all. And I'm not like, I wasn't living under a rock. I wasn't sort of stupid. I'd heard like that the T had become part of the LGB. And I remember like, just over however long it had been, I'd heard that. I'm not sure whether it was like a year or 2 years or something. I was like, oh, I trust that. Like, I support the LGB. Like, there's another letter. Cool. Okay. Never a moment's thought into what that was. I'd heard of things about like being inclusive, and I was like, that makes sense. And so when we were initially cancelled, people were coming at us and they're like, you're transphobic. But I was like, the trans people are allowed on. And I remember sometimes like I was saying like, of course, like trans women can. And I don't know what I was thinking when I was saying that. One, because it was the trauma of, you're having thousands of people come at you. You don't know what you're saying, and you're just kind of trying to see if you can fix something. You can't in that situation, but I didn't know that then. But also, I've thought so much about it since, of like, what did I even think was being spoken about. Like I never even thought of like men are women or something. I just never thought of anything. I was like being like a good little lefty. I didn't think. I just was like, I just accepted it was just something else happening. And so when basically, it blew up, I'd never even heard the word TERF before. And so I typed it into Twitter. I don't think I Googled it. I think I actually just went straight to Twitter. And I'd never tweeted before. I was just someone who just read Twitter. I used to just follow lots of journalists and comedians. And that's just by typing the word TERF, that's where I was like, introduced to like Helen Joyce and Julie Bindel and Jane Clay Jones, Glenna, like and then like, all of the, at the time, like I suppose there was a few thousand accounts of people like more anonymously speaking up. And I was just like reading everything they were saying. I'm like, this can't be possible. So I started just doing some research over a few months, and I was like, I mean, instantly, like, well, not instantly, but it was not long at all to realize that, like, that they were right in what they were saying. But I just went and like just kept trying to learn everything I could about it. And he was like, this is like as bad as what they say. This is really bad.
Mm.
So I think about by mid-2020, I decided to start speaking up about it because I was like, well, no, I've been canceled. People are saying cancel culture doesn't exist. It does. I'm literally living it. I'll start speaking out and defending women-only spaces and women in general. And so, and then like us all, I've peaked more and more. It's that roller coaster that you go on. Like, you do come out of the gate being a little bit more gentle with things. And then I'm almost 5 years into this now, and I'm just like, just no. Like, no is a full sentence here. No. No to any of it. You just kind of become a prisoner of what you know, in a sense, when you start researching this. So
Right.
then basically, in this time, a man who claims to be a woman in Australia went on the app, got on the app. He was able to get on. We had security to stop men from getting on. Occasionally one would. He got through. I would have removed him. I don't remember doing it. 'Cause, men occasionally got on. We just removed them. It was a normal day at the office. And he filed an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint against me, citing gender identity discrimination. To settle it in the AHRC, I would have had to agree to let him on, all men who claim to be women on the app, go to sex and gender education classes and pay him $20,000, and moderate the content of the app so that men who claim to be women weren't offended. So basically just control what women say. And so I said no. And then he took me to federal court. It was a 2-year long process. We got the verdict for it. It's called, in Australia, it's called the decision. We got the decision in August of this year, and he won this round. The judge said that I had indirectly discriminated against him because, despite the fact that I didn't know that he had a gender identity, the fact that he did is enough. Oh, what power that gives, doesn't it? And the judge also said that sex is changeable, which it isn't. So we are appealing the decision. We're currently in the process of doing that, and that will be heard either in March next year or July, because the full federal court appeal happens every few months. We'll be appealing to 3 judges. If we lose that round, our last option is the High Court. But I've always said I'm willing to go to the High Court if need be, because in Australia, what actually has to happen, we have these amendments that happened in the Sex Discrimination Act that, again, I did not know about. Most people don't. They put gender identity into the Sex Discrimination Act, muddling it, and they also took out the definition of woman and man. And so it's just a free-for-all. I mean, it's the act is essentially toilet paper at this point. But so the amendments that did that need to be repealed because they simply don't work. So the Tickle v. Giggle case, if that's what it's called, can play a role in repealing those amendments. So what started as creating an app for roommates has done this, and it was not the plan, but here we are. So that's basically my story in a nutshell.
Thank you, Sal. Well, yeah, I mean, for anyone who's not heard this, Sal has just described, what is that, 4 years in total? Longer?
Of the Tickle
Yeah.
Giggle case.
How long has it been going?
I got the AHRC complaint in January of 2022, and I was 15 weeks pregnant. To put it into perspective, my daughter is almost 2.5. And by the time, so if the appeal is heard in court next year in July, It will be around her 3rd birthday. And so then we'll get a decision from that within 3 to 6 months. Then the High Court will be in 2026. And so she'll be 4. So I'm going by like my daughter's
Yeah.
age and how I
Yeah.
how I do this. No, after I can't remember if it's after the hearing or and I think it was after the decision, he stood on the federal courts and made a statement and said, no, that this case has stolen the last 3 years of his life. She's like, you're
Yeah.
the applicant. You created this case. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he said, you couldn't go and have coffee or play hockey. I'm like, I didn't stop you from doing any of those things. You could do them every single day.
Case and the unlawful and discriminatory exclusion from the Giggle app has stolen the last 3 years of my life. I've been targeted by hateful and online commentary and degrading merchandise designed to ridicule and mock me. But a small group of people have taken it upon themselves to declare that I am not who I know I am, and they've set about making my life miserable. I know that I can now get on with the rest of my life, have coffee down the road with my friends, play hockey with my hockey team, and now put all of this horribleness behind me. Thank you.
And I'll pull you up there because you keep referencing to Roxy Tickle as he. Yet a judge has found today that Roxy Tickle is a woman.
Yeah, I mean, law is supposed to reflect reality. And in reality, this person is a male. So, I mean, you can make a court believe something, I suppose, but you're not going to make me believe it. So to be punished for acknowledging biological sex, I think puts all Australians at risk of being punished for having human instincts.
Subscribe to my Substack, Jack Jewell Uncut. This is where you will get my full, uncut, untamed, and unashamed takes too controversial for YouTube, including early access to all videos, a private members chat where you can talk to me, and bonus footage seen nowhere else, including this episode. Imagining women to be a costume, and sometimes then they talk about drag. Some women find that insulting in itself. What are your thoughts on just that alone?
It's never once occurred to me to take her to Drag Queen Story Hour in the exact same way that it has never once occurred to me to take her to a strip club.
There is a lot of misogyny within gay men, hate the idea of the nuclear family and everyone needs to be polyamorous. Autogynephilia, more people would benefit from understanding what this is.
I will say life is better before knowing anything about autogynephilia, castration fetishes. You have to actively not be looking for what's going on. It is that insane. Piers Morgan becomes the voice of reason. After the election, I just posted a picture of Rach Levine and just said, bye.
Absolutely good ratings to him. Link on screen and in the description.
First years of my pregnancy and my daughter's life have been, this has happened in the background the whole time, and the amount of energy it takes to make sure that it's not the focus, that she is the focus. It's a juggling act. I think I'm doing okay with it, but it is a lot of energy to do it.
I think what you're doing is remarkable. I mean, you're very inspiring, I think, for lots of people in this fight. And, I think similar to sort of Riley Gaines, who was just going about her life, had no plans to become any sort of an activist or campaigner for rights or women's rights or anything like that, was then thrust into this position where she had to be swimming against a male, in your case, your app being teared down just because you want a female-only app based on sex. And, it's very admirable how you've taken that and decided you're not going to let this happen, whatever it takes, even though it's kind of taken hold of so much of your life. So I'm sure there's so many people out there who admire that so much, me included. And it's the juxtaposition of all of this going on with what you guys are doing, which is very simple in a way of just saying we'd like spaces that are for female only based on sex. That's not too much to ask for, please. And the amount of hate from the trans activist community and sort of the woke bubbles in general and gay people, even though there's lots of us on your side, it's just incredible to see. Do you liken this to anything from the past? Like if you think about the suffragette movement and stuff like that, where there were these women piping up saying we want to vote, and then you had a bunch of people, even women telling them like, you're crazy. What the hell's wrong with you? What are you doing? Is it,
Completely. I mean, I say this all the time. Women fighting for women's rights have always done it with the opposition of a lot of men and far too many women. And in a way, it's sort of, I understand in some sense why they do it. Like human beings, like, we can become creatures of habit, so we can sort of just like the status quo. It's very safe in that. It can be scary to go and do something or have it different. So especially like say right now when everything's very, like politically tribal. And if your entire professional and social world revolves around you believing this nonsense, I get how you can just be like, like literally for my own survival, I just have to give into this. I suppose I wasn't in that position in a sense. Like I was in this really unique position where it was like, and I had the conversation with my mom. It was like because I was never going to just let him on. It wasn't like I was like, oh, well, no, been told. I was like, we either shut it down or we fight back. And I was like, it's not even just about the app. I was like, I am actually a woman. I would like to be able to say no to a male in any woman-only space. So it was like, I have to stand up for this. And then I had a daughter, and also like during the AHRC process, we're getting their submissions and they're saying, things like assigned male or female at birth or whatever, where I was having like the 20-week scan and I found out I was having a girl, and I was like, I'm literally having this female experience that in my real life, like I'm living this, that goes against everything that you are trying to say. Like your entire ideology is wrong. And so it's like, it just made it even more profound how much it needed to be pushed back on, because I was like, this is so anti-reality. It's why I always say, like, obviously I come at this for women's rights and women in the spaces. It's how I was brought into it. But I really think my baseline for it is freedom of belief and freedom of speech. I can't get past it, because I think that it's, but women and LGBT rights are the canary, and children are the canary in the coal mine here. But this is like all of society, because if they can make us believe men and women are women, they can make us believe anything. And that petrifies me. Like I've always wondered what it would be like to live in like a dystopian society. I was always really curious about that as a kid. I'm now no longer curious. So I feel this is very dystopian.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because you obviously know India Willoughby, right? Because he posted an Instagram yesterday and he said, guys, I might just insert the little clip of it.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're all as well as can be in these dystopian times in which we live. This is just a quick message to those who are feeling helpless and powerless at the moment. I'm one of them. I've felt terrible over the weekend. I'm still digesting the news about Donald Trump in the US. And obviously there's similar kind of stuff going on in the UK as well.
He was saying, guys, I've just woken up to another day in this dystopian world where, we're being attacked. And I was thinking, well, you're half right, because it certainly is dystopian. And, I agree with you wholeheartedly, because the pushback I get, especially from people I know in life that has been really tough. I guess in comparison to your situation, I did come from those circles where I had a lot to lose, but I was determined when I realized what was happening to gay kids that this was more important, and I wanted to speak about it regardless of the consequences. So it definitely can be very difficult. But I suppose the argument people say is, these are a tiny portion of the population. People focus on them too much. They get way too much media attention. They're the most vulnerable population in society. So why are you talking about them? And obviously you have some people that say they're actually women. Now, I think deep down, pretty much no one actually believes that. But they kind of prop each other up by this self-fulfilling prophecy, because everyone around them is saying it. Like, I mean, I think of it sort of like when I was around 9, 10 years old and I started questioning whether Santa was real. And I felt so much better when other kids around me were saying, no, 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 he is real. He is real. Because then I could feel kind of ensconced in this insular bubble.
You could stay in the
Yeah.
status quo. You could stay in that safe status quo that I was talking about, like, and you didn't have to go out and like and think of like the repercussions of he's not. What does that mean? We want to stay. That's why people sort of don't speak out against things that challenge them or whatever. Like I think it is quite a human instinct, but I also think that if kids weren't actually being like sterilized and mutilated, this would probably be over, because if they, because you just can't make people believe men aren't women. If that's all it was, I think it would be done by now, even though there's so much misogyny. It's just so ridiculous. I think why they're doubling down so much is because they've got no choice. They're involved in child abuse. And so they've got to go to the end with that. And like they're literally on board the Titanic, like getting dressed for the next day, like even though they like the bow of the ship is underwater, but they have no choice, because can you even fathom how do you even process? Oh, either I've been involved in child abuse, I've got to acknowledge this, or I've supported it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm glad that before I was aware that things weren't right, I wasn't actually aware that this was happening to kids, which is just so telling as to say how under the radar they've gone, you know? And I think that
Mm.
coming to terms to question yourselves, especially if you've been advocating for it publicly, even if it's just in social circles saying kids need these puberty blockers or whatever, that is a lot to lose. But you know, the longer they go, the more they have to lose. And I think, yeah, what you said, obviously, if it was just about females, maybe you're right. But then I guess the whole reason they created the idea of the trans child is to prop up we are actually women, you know,
Mhm.
we were born with this birth defect. Um, and it's, you know, it's tough trying to win people over, because if someone was kind of oblivious to some of this stuff and very supportive of LGBT and thought these people get attacked, if they heard us talking now, they would think that we're speaking so bluntly and harshly, you know? But
Yes, I do try. I try and remember that, and it is hard because it's sometimes like on Twitter X, whatever you want to call it. A newbie will stick his or her head up, and you can and they're trying to be polite or find middle ground or anything, and I'm just like, don't attack them. They're on a journey that we've
yeah,
all been on. Like I would attack. I would attack even 2021 Sal at this point. I'd be like, you moron, what are you talking about? You evolve with it. You get more confident. It is a process. And some of us have had, some people have had 10 years to get used to all of this and work it all out. I mean, I've been at it for
mm,
5. So you just sort of have to bite your tongue and be like, they'll get there eventually. Just let them watch the stuff, read the things, like, and they'll see we're not speaking cruelly or bluntly. We're simply speaking
yeah.
honestly.
And that's the thing. I think this is why this movement has been so effective, because LGB has been used as a direct comparison to T. So on all of the left wing podcasts and stuff I check in on to make sure I'm breaking out of my echo chamber, they always say, oh, this is just like Section 28. This is just like people saying that gay people were pedophiles or going to convince your kids that they're gay, or that men didn't want to share changing rooms with gay men. So they just liken all those things together, but then one is working in the realms of objective reality and just being an individual person of that sex who's free to do what they want without being harmed. And the other one is saying, to be kind to these people, we need to tell a little lie. But just just tell the little lie because it's nice, and you know, these are very, very vulnerable people. So that's the big difference, you know?
But it's also the argument that they're relying on of like, this is just like how it was like for gay people in the 80s. I mean, that relied on the reality of biological sex. So like even their comparison is disproving what they're saying now. Like there's just no such thing as homophobia if biological sex doesn't exist. There's no such thing as gay if biological sex doesn't exist. So in what they're pushing now dismantles all of that. It just not, this is the thing, none of it makes sense. None of it. In fact, the only thing that's consistent about gender ideology is that every single claim it makes, if you actually just like go to the complete opposite of what the claim is, you'll find the truth. It's amazing with every single claim. So that's why quite often you feel like you're like living in an upside down world, because that literally is what it is. It's just up is down, down is up, black is white, night is day,
Yeah.
just everything. And so I do the same. I go and check in with different things, and especially with people, like there's so many like journalists who I used to really respect, whose opinions I used to take on board and like they would influence me. I'm blocked by most of them on on X now, because they're all in on this and they just think I'm like a horrible bigot. But I still go and like read or listen to their stuff, and I'm like, how? Like I'm assuming a lot of them it's just to keep their jobs, but I'm 5 years in. Not one person has made a single argument or statement that has made me think, oh, I'm wrong. I've looked for it, not one. I look every day. I check in constantly. Like, you always want to make sure, like, hang on, am I actually a bigot? No one wants to be a bigot. Like, they've just destroyed the meaning of the word at this point. But like, if I had genuinely like become like radicalized or something, like I would want to stop. I wouldn't want to be.
Yeah.
So you're always going to find like just to check in and make sure. And then you go like, hang on, is it possible to be radicalized just by the concept that male and female exists and it's immutable?
It's sort of the most fundamental thing
it's
about
so-
being human, almost.
It's so, and that's why it's so crazy, and that's why it's so dangerous, because it's literally the most basic back. And there was Richard Dawkins who said like the uniqueness of biological sex is that it's binary. Most things exist on a spectrum. Like when does tall become short? When does night become day? When does young become old? All that sort of stuff. Biological sex, it's just male or female.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that that's cool. Like, just if we were in this moment in time where we sort of were in the early 2000s of like celebrating feminine men, like remember there was that like metrosexual era. If we were just like in this like feminine like man and masculine woman phase, like that would be progress. But we're not.
Oh yeah, it's
all a
I
lie.
mean, living in London, if I meet a gay man who is pretty androgynous or highly gender non-conforming, he usually is non-binary, or at least has he/they. So this is seen as the new progressive, oh my gosh, we need to accommodate for these people too. But what it's telling young gay people is if you're hyperfemme or hypermasc or whatever, then you're actually no longer in the category of male. And this causes a lot of issues
Yeah.
for some of the gender non-conforming gay people who disagree with this, or who just simply say, no, I'm still male, because then people are saying to them, oh, but what are your pronouns? I can see that you're, that they're then questioning, are you a man? Which is not great.
No, completely. I mean, even when, so you can go like to the end of the line with that of when people say, oh, well, like if he's had the surgery, then he can go into a woman's only space. And it's like, well, what about like a man who's had like testicular cancer? Where does he fall on your scale of being a man? Because as far as I'm concerned, he's just as much as a man as he was before he had any surgery down there. Like, it's so stupid. Like it's because the surgery, everything's all completely irrelevant, and they're just trying to bring everything down to a thought that you can't possibly know about another person. Like that was what the lines that my barrister actually said in our case, is that discrimination law cannot come down to a thought. And she's right, it can't. Like I can't tell what a man thinks about himself, nor do I actually care, and I shouldn't be obligated to. Especially when what I'm dealing in is material reality.
Yeah.
But yeah, live to fight another day. We'll get there. I have no doubt we will win eventually. All really bad ideologies do eventually fail. You just have to push back against them, and it's just how much carnage happens in the meantime. But it's inevitable that we will succeed, because, I mean, human beings can only continue existing on the basis of reality sex, like male and a female, bam.
Yeah.
It's how Yeah, it's that basic. So yeah, we will get there. This ideology will be a thing of the past, and I think that a lot of them will pretend they never supported it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Or, oh yeah, I always kind of had doubts. What How would you respond to the claim of, there are some people who say, they maybe say in hushed voices in private, we know they're men or whatever, but these people are, very vulnerable. They're a tiny percentage. So we should just, you know, give them what they need to ease their mental suffering and be kind. I mean, what would your response be to that?
Well, say in the context of like women only spaces in sport, it's not women plus nice men. Like it's just women. Like it's so we can't structure society around like, oh well, this one's vulnerable or this one's nice. And like, I mean that's subjective anyway. Like one person's, Prince Charming is another person's asshole. So it doesn't even work. So it's like you can support this vulnerable person without them going into a woman only space. That you can campaign for third spaces if that's what you think they need, or you could do, I don't know, be really nice and caring and talk to them and bring them back into reality and say, you're not the opposite sex, so maybe you should just ground yourself. There's lots of ways to care about a vulnerable person. You know, taking away women's rights, I don't think is the way to do it. And taking away anyone's rights is not the way to do it. So I just don't think that that's even relevant to the argument. You don't even have to get into the fact that, there's a lot of them aren't vulnerable at all. Like if a man can wear a dress in public, he's not vulnerable. Like, maybe in like the 60s, that would have been something that we'd react to, but men are wearing dresses in society every day.
Hmm.
Like they're fine. So
And
like this is apparently one with demographics.
yeah, and I think what's in everyone's minds when they argue about this is the type of transsexual woman who is a gay man, uh, you know, very modest and not encroaching, probably went through a lot of homophobic bullying and abuse, and now is trying to navigate the world or whatever. Uh, so I think that's kind of what's in people's minds, and I think there are, you know, trans identified males like that, and I have a
I do too, but I do actually wonder how comfortable would they be getting changed in a woman only space? Because all that would be happening to them, if you are like this is the thing, if you have genuine gender dysphoria, if this is a really real thing and that you are so distressed by it, and so you're not a predator, you are a vulnerable, like just really like unhappy and distressed person, you wouldn't hurt a fly, you just want to be comfortable. Would you be comfortable in a female only space getting changed? Because it's going to do is highlight it. If anything, you'd think that a person like that would be wanting to be as absolutely private as possible and would probably be going to like singular third spaces by choice. So the fact that the moment a man is like insisting on going into a woman's only space, I just feel like instantly you're dealing with someone who doesn't care about women's boundaries. You're dealing with someone who is just pretty borderline. Like it's predatory behavior. Whether he's actually a predator, he's definitely in the realm of it. So the moment there's a demand to have access to a female in this space, I don't think we're dealing with someone vulnerable. I think the actual vulnerable people are actually required.
Yeah, I largely agree. I think, well, you know, as a gay person, I try and sometimes bridge the gap a little bit between things. And I have a lot of trans people, male and female, who watch my content and actually agree with everything I say. And they are the type of people who only use third spaces, and are against the ideology. Like they say, accept, I know I'm a man or a woman, but for whatever reasons in life, I made these decisions and now I'm more comfortable. Obviously, that's another talking point on like whether this really works on average. I think some people get lucky and they seem to actually have a lot of success and largely a good life. We don't have great science behind whether this really works for people on average. So I do think those people exist, but it's kind of a shame for them sometimes because I can understand if you were the type of person who never wanted to infringe on someone's rights and didn't even demand someone use pronouns for you, whatever, that now you're part of this whole umbrella who are sterilizing kids and,
Yeah, no, definitely. But I mean, yeah, without a doubt, I bet some people who call themselves trans in this journey of the last 5 years who are but really nice, funny, just have a chat, have a laugh, like all good. You know, I would never not speak to somebody on that basis. Like when when we're just like in agreement, it's not like I'm going to say like, oh no, because are this. I'm not like, no, that would potentially be some sort of bigotry. But I do think, I don't think it should have ever been a treatment plan at the same time. I think that it would have, even if someone is going like, oh, it's working for me, it's like, yeah, but it still led to all of this. And if it's like destroying society, it's still like you're feeling better because of some sort of lie that you have to sort of live. I don't know. I just don't think I buy that it's completely working for anybody. I think that there'd be a lot of people who would say that it is because they have to, and I understand that. And I don't hold anything against them in that respect, but I just think that it would have been better from day one if it was just, look, if you are genuinely having these feelings, like they're not real, and let's work it out to get you really comfortable in the one body you have in life. And if you are male and you want to be really feminine, awesome, that's fine. Let's get society ready for that. Or if you're a woman or girl or woman and you want to be really masculine, fine, let's go with that. I just think that would have been so much healthier, because I actually don't really know that many people who are really against that, like, because it does just come down to that live and let live, and the majority of people are like, that's the live and let live part, because it's like no laws have to be changed for that, nothing. It's just, that would just be, if there's any little prejudices in society that's sexism, that would be total sexism. It would be like maybe even the last frontier of that. Instead, it's just gone in the whole opposite direction. And even now, like say in the wake of the US election, we're seeing some, and these are not the rational, nice people, we're seeing some sort of autogynophiles with a profile repositioning themselves now as like the reasonable man who claims to be a woman. And none of them are. They're literally all just trying to take it back to what got us here. It's like the definition of insanity. Like they just really want history to repeat itself, of just like this concept of like true trans and things like that. And it's like, again, we can't measure this. This is subjective. You can't have it based on whether someone is like a man has had the surgery, for example, because you know what? That's castration, that's forced sterilization, and you can't make human rights laws based on sterilization. That's like against like the Geneva Convention. Like you're not allowed to do it, and you can't. It also, it just doesn't make anyone a woman. It's not true. It's just the only way we can go from this is, I think, going like, okay, this was all wrong. It was all a failure. We have to work out how to help people who have these feelings. We have to accommodate the people who have gone through everything and make sure that they are safe and happy. But gender ideology in any shape or form of it does not work. It just simply doesn't work in society, because everything is the opposite of what it claims, even for the ones who think it works.
Yeah, honestly, I think what you say makes perfect sense. And I think sometimes I find myself sort of wanting to believe certain things because we're told that a certain position is just so extreme and radical to say what you just said, even though it makes sense, right? And I think if they're going to continue offering this medical treatment, the studies for adults are inconclusive. I mean, the whole reason they came up with the puberty blocker thing in the Netherlands is because they noticed that all of their post-op trans women were unhappy and not having successful lives. So the very basis of
Yes.
sterilizing children came from, oh, well, this treatment, it doesn't really seem to be being very effective, right?
Yeah, let's do it to the younger. It's criminal. It's just so criminal. I just can't fathom how human beings are
Mm.
capable of this. It's criminal and it's stupid. And it's like, I mean, but it's what I was saying before. It's like just it was what I'm saying extreme and radical. I'm literally saying male and female exist. You can't change sex, and it does not define how you have to dress or what interests you have to. That's when it comes down to it. That's literally all I'm saying. And if someone thinks that that's extreme, I think they're wrong.
Yeah, they would probably say you're straw manning the concept of trans, that it's like that there's so much more to it than that.
I would say they are wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and it's just for me speaking to people in real life saying, do you not know that kids, you know, this is more the gay type of trans people rather than the autogynephile, but that kids who are this gender non-conforming and bullied and harassed and in distress, like, do you not know that they will most likely become gay? And they just can't answer that question. Their eyes kind of glaze over. And I'm like, I'm talking to you about people, you know, sterilizing versions of me, the person that you're supposed to love or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's really got its
Yeah.
claws into everything.
Yeah, when you're on our side, like, in a sense, it gets really boring talking about this because we're just, finding out what the facts are, staying in reality. Nothing changes. So you're just saying the same things over and over again. It must be more interesting on the other side because you can just make up any nonsense that you want. And like it can get pretty colorful. It's just, I have no doubt that there'd be lots of people who are in some way, shape, or form involved in gender ideology that would love to come at me and find flaws in what I'm saying. I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
No one changes sex. If you think that somebody has, if there's this sort of this gendered soul, this innate gender identity, there's literally no proof of it. You may feel like you have one. I can't say that you don't. But what you can't do is force anyone else to have anything to do with it. It's your business. Like having like a Christian soul is
Mhm.
their business. You can believe it. That's a free society. Like you do you. It's just that your rights stop when mine start. That's all there is to it. So I'm not saying that no one can believe it. It's just, it
Yeah.
really just,
You can't
I mean,
force it into law.
I would say why? Yeah. And I'd also say, like, why do you want to? Life can be really, really fun when you stop thinking about yourself. There's so much more to life than your identity and who you are. Like, just there's music and there's helping people and there's finding like a purpose beyond yourself. There's family, there's travel, there's so many interesting things. Just stop thinking about yourself.
Yeah, while we were talking about autogynephilia, like when you were in this court case, did that come up at all as a concept? Because obviously we can't make direct assumptions about Roxanne Tickle, or maybe even you can't more because you're involved in this. But I guess from an onlooker, I would say he fits the mold, you know?
I don't think it came up in the court case in any of submissions or anything like that because it's irrelevant. Because in law, it's not like woman plus autogynephile or anything like that. Like it is just so binary. It's male or female. So, it's not that, oh, if a man doesn't have autogynephilia, then he can come in. So, no, I mean, and to be honest, I don't care why a man thinks he's a woman. It could be autogynephilia, it could be gender dysphoria, it could be just he is just simply a predator, seizing upon an opportunity. It could be someone who has this genuinely held belief. I don't care. You're not. This is just fact versus fiction. So yeah, you can't really sort of, there's no sort of legal arguments when it comes to autogynephilia, I wouldn't think, because it's
Yeah.
irrelevant.
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense. And do you think, the judge ruled that sex is changeable, right? Do you
Yeah.
think, I mean, I'm so fascinated, I wish I could have watched that, but was this judge, do you feel like the judge was completely captured, or was the judge only working in the realms of what you already have, which is very crappy law and
We definitely have
documentation.
crappy law. We definitely have crappy law. He did not need to go so far as to say that sex is changeable. It feels like it's a dare. You know, what's happened in Australia basically is gender identity was introduced. Definitions of man and woman were taken out. So then how does the law work? And what is it supposed to do? So I initially called this, and I had said I'm on the record saying a few times that they took the definition of sex out. They didn't. There was never any definition of sex in the Sex Discrimination Act. It was one of those things in 1984 when they put the legislation in, they didn't think they had to define what sex was. Now I think they do. I genuinely do think they need to put that in there. I think that going forward in legislation, define everything, every single word, so there can never be any confusion. But it's the taking out the definition of woman, because then basically with Tickle v. Giggle is the first case in Australia, and it's not like this law has been working well for 11 years, by the way. Everyone else just crumbled when they were threatened with it. I just didn't. Maybe I'm a masochist. I don't know.
Wow.
But I've spoken to many people who crumbled. They had no choice. I thought I had no choice but not to.
What kind of situations did other people find them in? Was it also over kind of access to spaces, or?
Yeah, for women-only gyms. This is the main one. Lots of women-only gyms. Lots of men going during Australian Human Rights Commission complaints to women-only gyms, and them going they're small family-owned businesses. A lot of them, or they're part of a bigger chain, but they don't have corporate support, and it's like, okay, we're just gonna have to let them in and work this out. Yeah. And
Wow.
so, yeah. And so what was the question? Now I've completely forgotten.
We were talking about whether the judge actually believed this, or was it just because he couldn't get around the?
So what happened with the case is the Australian Human Rights Commission intervened as amicus curiae, which means friend of the court. So they're there to interpret the law. And they, as the Australian Human Rights Commission, they have a statutory right to do that. So even though you're sort of asked whether they can, but even if I'd said no, they still could have done it. Because apparently can't say no to anything. Here we are. But so they intervened, and so they're there to interpret the law, and the Australian Human Rights Commission is captured. The Sex Discrimination Commission specifically is. I actually know that there are some people at the AHRC who are on our side, but they're in a completely different department, so goodness it. But the Sex Discrimination Commission is completely captured, which makes sense. Of course, that's where all the activists went. That's the place where that's the first place you'd capture it, really, because that's the place where you're going to be able to infiltrate law and everything else. And they were actually instrumental in lobbying to get the amendments in 2013, and of course they were. And so I remember when there was two submissions before we went to court that they did. There was the first one where they applied to intervene. And that was just mind-blowing. It was just nonsense what they were writing. But in one part of it, they actually have to list their expertise in other cases, their history of similar things to this. But because there's no case history on gender identity versus sex, this is the first one, they had no other cases like this that they could cite. So instead, they actually just listed all of the cases that they've intervened in the family court of getting gender-affirming care to minors. So they literally, in their application to intervene in Tickle v. Giggle, were bragging about sterilizing kids. I remember when I was reading it, just going just started drinking, because I was like, I just can't believe this. And I sent that to media. I was like, fair. Our Human Rights Commission is involved in this. So the thing, they've got to double down. They've got no choice. They do have a choice. They could actually unironically grow some balls and stand up for what's right, but well, that's going to happen. But they when they actually did the submission of what their sort of legal arguments were, I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's literally like, you can read it on the federal court website. If you just type in Tickle v. Giggle, all the documents are there, and just find like that it just listed like the Australian Human Rights Commission submission. I think it's like 28 pages, and it's like reading Orwell. It's like reading a draft of Orwell that even he would have gone, this, no one will believe this. Like, I mean, there's one part of it where they say that a man desiring to be pregnant is sufficient for him to be covered as a woman in sex discrimination law. And they're saying that because basically in sex discrimination law, obviously, like, if you say there's a woman who's like 32 and she just got engaged, you can't fire her because there's obviously a desire for her to be pregnant soon. So that exists in sex discrimination law, but they're including these men in that. Like, it's just, they're just saying, like, for all the law, they're women. And you're like, they're not. They're just literally not. And so where's the Australian Human Rights Commission just, I mean, and then like in the hearing for 3 days, just sat there, I mean, literally just going like, you know, they just sort of kept saying like, it's a thought. It's just like, it's psychological. Like, you don't even have to do anything. It's just,
Oh
I
my
said that
God.
my dad sat next to me, like my solicitor Kath was there, and then I was sitting here, like barristers are up front. And my dad was next to me, and we actually had a notebook. I have it in my drawer, and we would just write notes to each other the whole time. And it was just so much of it. It's just like, what the fuck are they talking about? It was madness. It was the craziest thing I've ever witnessed. I mean, I think there was 4 men in the room. I think there was one male solicitor for the AHRC, and there was the judge and my dad and the applicant. Everyone else was a woman. Like, it just said to go, like, we all know who the men and the women are in this room.
Yeah. How have you been able to stay sane?
I have to laugh at it a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so absurd. I think it's so stupid. Like, I say at the time, like, I respect the process of the law, even though it's very long and boring and expensive. Can't respect that part, but I do, because I think women should get paid for their work. So I respect that, but God, it's expensive fighting for something so stupid. But so, like, I respect the process of the law and like the judicial system. I do not respect the premise of this case. I don't think that it should have ever been a case. I don't think that these amendments should have ever happened. I don't think a single woman should have ever been in this position. I don't think a single man should have been validated as a woman. I think the whole thing is stupid. But how I stay sane ultimately is I know I'm right. I know 100% I am right. And it is really, really rare in life to know that you are right. Usually we're like, oh no, I've got to be a bit humble here. I could be wrong. This person is male. He is a man. He can think whatever he wants about himself, but he is a man. That is reality. It takes him being a man for this case to exist. There isn't a single woman or planet who would have to take me to court to use the app. Only a man would have to do that. So I just 100% know I'm right. I know I'm not going to wake up one day and be like, oh no, they really are women. It's not possible. They're never going to be women. So I hold on to that a lot. And I know that, you know, law, like I keep saying, I'm tweeting this a lot, like, sex doesn't change, but laws do. And it's hard to get laws changed. It's so much has got to be in play for it to happen. But it's possible. So like, I think that our job is actually easier because it is possible to get a law changed. It is not possible to change sex. They have a much harder job. They are literally pushing shit up legal. We are not. We can win this. So I am overall incredibly optimistic. We are right. Our legal arguments are right. Ideological capture is obviously an obstacle, but that's got a lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, no, I'm feeling good about it at the moment. I'm excited for it to eventually be over. Like, apparently there's a thing called litigation psychosis. Like, some people can actually become so consumed by it, and you know, it can kind of send you crazy. But I want to run an app for women. That's actually what I want to do with my life. So that's like the trunk of my tree. It's what keeps me there. I just go like, okay, that's what I want to do. Stay focused on that. I have an end goal. I have something I want to do. I want this to be over so I can do that. Like there is nothing in it for me for gender ideology to continue. I haven't like made a career out of it or anything. My career is
Yeah.
over there. Like I'm
What you
like
originally wanted.
eventually I will never have to do another interview ever again. I will be an anonymous woman who is running an out. There'd be nothing for me to talk about. So I'm optimistic. I know all the goals. I know what I want. I think we'll get there. We have an avenue to get there. We have many avenues to get there. So yeah, and men aren't women.
Well, I'm
so
behind you every step of the way, of course. When is the next stage? I don't know
I
all the
don't know
terms
yet.
exactly. But
We'll find out. We're going back and forth with that at the moment. We'll find out soon. It's just appeals are usually one day, but this is looking like it's going to blow out to a few. So you've got to then find that like when everybody has the available time. And as I said earlier, like the full federal court where we're appealing to. And I will say, actually, I've got to add this because I've always said I would go to the High Court, and there was a chance it would go straight from federal to High Court, but we have to stop off, unfortunately, at the full federal court first for the appeal because in the decision there are so many facts wrong, not just about the law but also about the case itself. Like for example, the judge said in the decision that the provision to use the app was that you had to look like a cisgendered woman. It's like, well, no, you just had to be female, and female in the ordinary use of the word, which is biological. That's it. You just had to be female. It doesn't matter what you look like. Like a woman who claimed to be a man could use it. She's female, so she could use it. So when anyone says that we're transphobic or trans exclusionary, no, male exclusionary. It's that simple. And so, just you can't go into the High Court when there's so many facts, both of the law, of the interpretation of the law and of the facts of the case itself are in place. So we actually have to fix them before you could go, because once you go to the High Court, you're literally just dealing with legislation-y sort of stuff. It'll be real. Like, that will be very boring if we get there. But that's the big one. I mean, if we get there, but I mean, it would be really nice if we won this next round. They did not appeal it to the High Court because that's the only place to go after this, and then everyone can move on with their life. I can run a women-only app. Other women can have women-only spaces and events and services, and the applicant in this case, or he's now the respondent in the appeal, he can go off and live his life, have coffee, play hockey, wear a dress, call yourself whatever you want. I wish you well. I don't know how many times I can say it. I'm like, go and live your life. Go and use all of the other internet places that cater specifically for you.
Go and set up your own app.
Yes, be my guest.
Specifically
set
for
up.
women and men who say they're women. See who arrives.
Go and a women plus trans women only app. Call it Tickle and have fun.
Do you need to?
I better go. Okay, my darling.
Thank you, Sal. Well, it's been an absolute blast, and yeah, I'm going to be paying very close attention to everything. I'll put your Twitter handle and everything in the description, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.